I had a crazy idea, right? We all as Toledoans know that we have an algae bloom problem that comes around right around this time of year. And I propose that we swim out into the lake, grab the algae, and bring it back to shore. Sounds completely stupid and bonkers, right? Well, it's not as simple as I just made it seem right then and there, but before I really kind of go into that, I want to let you guys know who I am. So as Nate said, I am a student of neuroscience. I started off in engineering and then made the transition over to neuroscience right before I graduated. I've actually taken off this last year to kind of focus on my own little business called PlexNet because I consider myself a solutions expert. Now that isn't trying to build myself on a pedestal or anything like that. It's just if you present me with a problem, I'm going to solve it, right? That's just my personality. I obsess with problems. And with that passion and playing to my strengths, I decided why not try to make this into a company. So over my years in being a solutions expert, if you will, I've successfully redesigned a toilet for ASME, and that was a worldwide competition. And out of everyone, 10 of us were selected, and my new toilet was one of them. I've been able to work with NASA in the summer program to actually develop a mock rover and complete the entire mock mission, Mars mission, and all of that. So that was really interesting. But out of everything my passions and interests have led me, I think hacking Lake Erie was probably my favorite. And the reason because of that is I actually met failure quite a bit while doing this, right? So the first time around, Nate jokes around and says that I beat him, but in reality, his team actually beat mine. I proposed to develop a series, a network of water drones that will go out into the lake, collect the algae, encourage its growth, essentially cultivate algae, then bring it back to shore where we can use that algae for biofuel. That idea got torn down so hard. And from that, I mean, usually, you know, I'm not a stranger to failure, right? Failure and me, we're like this, we go way back. But that failure, it kind of hit home because this was the first time I actually associated one of my ideas with me so intimately, right? It was me and this drone. We developed something over that little weekend. So I got kicked out of the competition. It was a weekend event. I lost, right? And I could have took that. I could have went home and lived my life, went back to work. But again, I obsess over problems. I now have a problem that my solution didn't solve. So I started asking questions. I had the pleasure of talking with Jason. He gave me some amazing feedback, which actually inspired me to do the next redesign, all while still being out of the competition. And while working, I reached out to some resources, some water experts, some algae, or I guess microbe experts, if you will, and I came up with a new design, a new solution, and luck have it, Morgan actually contacted me because apparently I got the attention of some right people, and I was re-entered into the competition. Cool, right? Go to Detroit. This is my big chance to reestablish myself as a solutions expert. I did it, but I come in last. Dead last, I think. Honestly, if I wasn't an add-on, I'm pretty sure I would not have been selected. My new proposal for my solution was to do these water drones again, but instead of trying to cultivate algae, let's just mitigate algae, right? We take microcystic algae and good algae, we monitor the two, and we allow the good algae to outcompete the bad algae for natural resources in the lake, primarily phosphorus and nitrogen. And from that last setback, or not necessarily a setback, from that semi-victory, I guess, I went and talked to the judges. You know, why did I come in last? Yes, it's a success. I made it to the next round, but why was I in last place? And I just want to ask the entire audience here a real quick question. When I say water drone, how many of you guys think I'm talking about something that flies? Cool, and there was my issue, right? How the heck do you have a flying drone go out to Lake Erie, pick up algae, and redeposit it back into the lake? That wasn't at all what I was suggesting. So I had to do some rebranding. That's something I took away from that failure, right? Anytime you hit a failure or a road bump, you need to take something away from it, and that's what I do. I talk to people. Why didn't you like this? What could I have done better? Even if I would have won first place, I still want to know where else can I improve in. So that big one there was branding, pretty much like what you're talking about. I had to step away from the entire term water drone and, you know, do something different. But being hard-headed, I didn't. I get to Cleveland, and here's the finals. I rebrand or repackage everything, right? I changed the form factor. I increased the size of my drones. I changed the way that they look. I changed their mission to a two-phase mission. One phase is where we're actually attacking the Maumee River. by actually having these drones act as an antibody for the river, absorb the phosphorus and nitrogen before it gets downstream into the lake. And then in the second phase, we collect any microcystic or algae bodies in general in the lake with these same drones, but switching out the cores. Really good pitch, everything went well, get some amazing feedback, and I lost. So second loss, this one I didn't take as hard, right? I talked to the judges and they told me exactly why I lost. A, the whole branding issue. They hear drone and they instantly think, a lot of people think of something that flies, but luckily there were some judges who put two and two together and figured out that this is actually a drone that kind of skims on the surface of the water, collecting and allowing the water to flow through its modular core. And the second reason I lost is because, well, it's a competition. I neglected to remember that. And I needed a team. And a team actually made up a lot of the points in this competition. So taking that loss, I decided, well, you know, I could be done or I can finish designing this thing out, and that's what I did. And that's kind of why I'm up here now, because I'm not up here to, yes, I'm up here to share my experience, but I'm also up here because I want to spark a conversation. I want to be able to talk to all of these brilliant minds in here about my new design, about my new mission. I've stepped away from a drone and I've developed a USV, unmanned submerged vehicle. So think a submarine filled with a macroalgae that floats underneath the Maumee River, absorbing some of that extra nitrogen and phosphorus. It is a hybrid machine, so it uses a diesel engine, but I envision that one day we can actually use the microalgae as it grows for biofuel. We can actually use the natural resource called the Maumee River for the cultivation and the growth of algae, driving down the cost of producing biofuels or algae biofuels, because the major cost of developing algae biofuels is phosphorus. And we have an entire lake and river of it just kind of floating around. So I envision being able to use the algae for biofuels. I envision being able to reduce and mitigate the phosphorus and reduce that algae threat, the microcystic algae threat going forward, where we're not actually reacting to the threat, but we're preventing it, right? We all know the issue. We know the main players. And I think it's time that we stop reacting to problems, especially this one, and actually work to prevent it. And I think my little USV, my unmanned submerged vehicle called OWL, and a network of them can actually help do that. And that's kind of where I'm going to end, and I'm going to open it up to Q&A because I'm a horrible teacher and I cannot give you information without the right questions. So there's that.
I first saw it, instead of going out in the lake, what about going back to the source like Pro Ditch or tracing it up the line where it comes from?
Yeah, so I considered that quite a bit as well, but the idea was it's so many sources and so many little streams and inputs into the lake that why not just attack the big guy, right? I mean, yes, it's a big task, but we know where Maumee River is at. We have the nutrient loading information of the Maumee River already. And with all of these resources, and I could be completely wrong, and this is why I'm opening up the conversation, I just thought it would be most efficient to just deploy the drones, even if we have to have a couple of thousand, or not a couple of thousand, but like about 1,000 of these drones stretching up the entire river, patrolling around, absorbing some of those nitrates and phosphorus, and then go ahead and collecting those excess algae bodies in the lake itself. I thought that would be a better solution, but most definitely, if you have anything on like some of the smaller bodies, I'm all ears. So
what is the size of the new design drone?
The size of the new design drone is about the size of a compact car. So we're talking about 161 inches, roughly, base length. And I was going to bring a little mock-up of it, but it seemed too much like a toy for this audience, because I own a 3D printer and I go crazy with that thing like all the time, but had a little 6-inch version, but I was like, you know, I guess my nerves got to me. I was like, no one wants to see a toy, you know, so. But I will show you guys the design files. I do have them on my phone, and you can actually see what it looks like, and I can go into more detail that way, so.
So when you send one of your drones out to mitigate some phosphorus, how much can it mitigate before it has to like return and do something with it? Or?
So the beautiful thing with the macroalgae, because I plan on using chaetomorpha, which is a very long, stringy type of algae body. As it absorbs, it just keeps growing. So that is going to be, it really depends on the concentration levels of what's ever present in the lake at that time. So say for whatever reason, we have 1 week where phosphorus and nitrogen are just through the roof and we deploy these drones out, then we're probably talking about servicing within 4 days if the Toledo was to be able to grow that fast. But because it is a macroalgae, and it is a more of a weed type of structure, and by the way, I don't want to just like throw algae into the river and create another problem. This algae is contained within a container, right? And this container allows the water to flow through, and we're controlling where and how the algae grows. So pretty much it's going to vary depending on the nutrient load in the river at any given time throughout the year.
So you're using algae as the filter?
I'm using, yes.
Oh.
Yes. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
So, my thought about a drone is something that's controlled, right?
Yes.
A drone that flies, we kind of can envision radio waves or something. But a drone that's a submarine,
Yes.
that
So you have a beacon on shore, which is going to act as the main information hub. And then you have the drone, and then you attach another beacon out to a buoy or to the other side of the river, if you will. The way I have it currently set up is that any one drone, depending on which side of the line, if you have a straight line between the two beacons, if the drone is on the right side of that line, it needs to know the location of the drone to its right in order to determine where it's at and determine where it needs to be at, right? So if that drone is adjusted or anything else, it's a simple program that essentially just says, this is my body of water, or this is my area that I have to travel in, right? Think of one of the little robot cleaning guys. Yeah, this is my area. Now I need to know what the next guy next to me is doing, and I need to know a reference mark, which happens to be the beacons on either side of the shore in the case of Maumee River. With that information, I can then determine where I need to be at, what area I've already covered, and then come back to shore whenever it's done. Does that answer?
Why does it have to be mobile as opposed to it being like an algae dam that just flows?
Because you need to create flow through the the Toledo needs the water to actually flow over it. And because if we have something that's stationary, I mean, having a stationary object underwater is going to be more, I think, constructive, intensive. Like, you're going to need to have some guys under there really freaking building this thing up, versus having a little drone you can kind of deploy underwater and let it do its about and then come back to shore and service it at that time.
Would you, or have you tested it in a smaller body of water before putting it into the Maumee River?
I will test it. I'm currently right now trying to, my 3D printer is running. I'm going to essentially stitch together a smaller version of this thing and find either a local quarry or something that has algae problem and see how well it does to actually reduce the phosphorus and nitrogen level. As in proof of concept, what I'm doing isn't necessarily novel. It sounds great, but in reality, I'm just taking what refugiums and aquariums already use these algae bodies. As I plan on using them, I'm just changing the delivery method for it.
Have you taken into account possible boat traffic?
Yep, that's why it's going underwater. So right now I'm doing my research to see the deepest level, because being that it is the river, it has a limit on how big a boat can be. As long as I can get that clearance, and assuming that the nutrients are constant throughout the lake, I should still be able to get the exact same results that I want.
Can you estimate a cost for a working prototype?
A working prototype? Okay, so a working prototype is probably going to be somewhere about $1,000 to $2,000. So that's just for one. And that's assuming that I have a bunch of materials in place. If I have to go and create my own molds and everything else, then we're talking probably quite a bit of money. So I know you guys.
So, I mean, related to that, the more important cost is probably what's an actual unit going to cost in the end. And that's probably, don't answer that question, that
Okay.
gets too hard.
Yeah.
How much does it need to cost in order to sell this to a sponsor like the local government?
Honestly, I put things in perspective for you. So the city of Toledo, the same city that can't fix Anthony Wayne Trail, spent $4 million in 2014 on chemical trails to reduce the algae problem. $4 million. Even if my entire system costs $300,000, you're still going to be looking at $300,000, let's just say ballpark of $150,000 of service over the next few years. You're still looking at a better solution than spending $4 million each year on chemical traces just to react to an issue versus preventing it in the first place.
So what did you lose to, and what have you learned from those to apply to your own?
The first time I lost to my friend here, Trayvon, friend here, Nate, which actually had very good ideas. Not to say that none of the ideas were good or weak, but it was mostly apps. Yeah, apps were the first round. The second round, I came in last. The one that tripped me up the most was a application where you could take a picture of a fish and it like identifies the fish. I don't know how that necessarily helps the lake, but you know, kudos for them. And the third round in Cleveland, I actually thought the guys who won deserved it. Well, one was a micro buoy, right? I'm sorry, I'm not smug whatsoever, but there is some judgment in pursuit. One was a micro buoy, a little guy like this that would attach to other buoys and provide information that we already have access to. That's me being bitter and petty. But it provide nutrient information to local governments and local officials. And another one was a network of submergible satellites, I guess is the Wi-Fi, yeah. A network of, so we can have Wi-Fi on lake, and I guess we can also collect data that we already have access to. Again, so those were, but it was valid because these groups, they had full teams. I was just up there, you know, like, oh, look at me, I'm Mr. Solo, and in all fairness, they deserve to win because they played the game, so you can't, you know. Cool? Good?
All right.